Tired of serving up the same old tasteless victuals to your family? Step up your grill game with new seasonings from Cloy's Southern Eats. Based off famous Southern recipes, our seasonings will add what's been missing to your family's feast. Add it to steak, chicken, shrimp, you name it. Serving up these fixings is going to make you the hero at home. So head on over to CloysSouthernEats.com and order yours today. Come get you some.
And everybody, welcome to a Hogville.net special. I have got the host of Talking Ball on 97.7 ESPN in Huntsville, Alabama, in the Tennessee Valley, Drew DeArmond. I'm going to bring him on now. Here it comes. Drew, how you doing, man?
What's up, Jason? How you doing, man? Good to be on with you again.
I appreciate it. Yeah, likewise. It's been for you guys, kind of a little up and down, and you guys are starting to trend up there at Alabama, Arkansas. It's kind of it went up and then it's gone down a little bit. But Arkansas and the Tide, they're going to square off at 11 a.m. this coming Saturday. And last week, Alabama, or yesterday, really, Alabama A&M game of the week, CBS. It was a great platform, and it really was kind of a coming out party for Jalen Milroe.
It was a little bit. I mean, no question. I felt like going into the game, I picked Alabama 27-24. My gut told me they would play their best game, but I felt like Jalen had to be the MVP. I felt like he had to take some steps forward, which I thought he took some increment steps at Mississippi State the week before, but he didn't throw the ball a lot. I felt like he had to be the best player for Alabama yesterday offensively. Now, I had it mapped out a little different. I had maybe 200 yards passing, a large chunk rushing. I thought Alabama could run the ball for 150 yards. I thought they'd run it better than they did. But they were basically running in quicksand all day. The A&M front was really tough to run against. They were loading the box and trying to take the run away, trying to make Milroe a passer. That worked for Texas. He threw a couple of really horrendous interceptions and certainly played okay, made some plays, but again, did not play nearly well enough to beat a team of that caliber. But I felt like going in, if Alabama could give Milroe time, he's a good deep ball thrower. You saw that again yesterday. I felt like that they could make plays against the A&M secondary, which was terrible against Miami. And I kind of felt like going into the game, I felt like Alabama had an advantage in two of the three stages. I thought Alabama had a better kicking game. I thought Alabama had a better defense. But offensively, I guess you could give a small, nod to A&M. They have really good skill guys. Max Johnson's not an ordinary backup. He has experience. He started against Alabama a couple years ago at LSU and home field. So, Milroe had only had one true road start in his career last week. And so there was some doubt. And, we hadn't seen consistency. But I thought for the majority of the game, Milroe's ball placement was really, really good. A&M gambled and tried to make him a passer, and he and Tommy Rees came through. I thought Rees, who's had his bumps in his first year as OC, I thought the second half they were smart. Look, if you're going to take the runaway, we're going to take the short intermediate throws. And Milroe had struggled with those early, but he did not yesterday for the most part. And he made some big-time throws, ripped some. The biggest one I thought was the little corner route on third down and about 8 in the red zone against Jermaine Burton, who had his best game in an Alabama uniform. Matter of fact, a stat we were looking at and tracking is going into that game yesterday, and it was one that raised your eyebrows and that made you wonder, could Alabama win this game, is they did not have a red zone touchdown pass all season until the Burton yesterday. So, but they did. And then Milroe, there were some keys I thought he had to hit in order to win. I thought he needed to have the 300 all-purpose yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns, either with his legs and arm. He did both of those, even though it was in a different form, but all passing just about. Only one double-digit carry, 3 touchdown passes. 1 or less turnovers. That was the case. He threw an interception, which I wasn't even really that frustrated by. He just threw it a half second too late because the very next play, Caleb Downs, it was the defensive play of the game. I thought that and the safety, Caleb Downs stealing the interception back for Alabama. And so I thought, Alabama did lose the turnover battle 2-1, but they didn't have anything, just horrendous happen as far as that goes. They didn't give up any scores that way. And I thought when it came down to it, that they needed to make 2 or 3 explosive passing plays. They made about 5 or 6. So they was really able to exploit that Aggie secondary, which made up for the lack of running game in a way. Now too many penalties, 14 of them. And that was just horrendous. They've got to cut those down. But even though they got called back, they made a big play in the kicking game, and I thought that would be key, and they blocked the field goal. Should have been a touchdown. I didn't think it was a good call on the blindside block, but it's also a valuable lesson for Dallas Turner. Just don't touch anybody. Start celebrating with your teammates. It's not worth it. And again, Arkansas knows about officiating as well. The officiating in the league is not great at times. Don't give them any excuse. And so, but Alabama won the ball game. That's all that matters. Milroe made a bad decision late on clock management. He'll have to learn from that. They were very fortunate to still hold on to the ball. And I will say this, the blindside block penalty was kind of made up for with the fate of the football gods. When you throw when you're trying to bail out and you're trying to throw a ball late, to move the chains, and you're Milroe, you're trying to get away from the rush, you throw it to McClellan. If he catches it clean, his knee's on the ground. But luckily, the ball bounced up in the air. He catches it and can run after the catch and gets the first down. So a lot of times, in some form or fashion, those kind of even out, and Alabama was able to run the clock out and beat a really good A&M team on the road, 26-20. And now they look ahead to Arkansas. And I love Coach Pittman. I thought going in though that this might be a tough year for him, because they were transitioning to new coordinators. I know he hired a new strength staff, and they've had really this is year 4 for Coach. They've had just tough schedules every year. They had another tough one this year. Now, I didn't expect them to drop that game to BYU. That surprised me a little bit, and it's almost seemed like since that game that they've been in a little bit of a funk. They've been competing. They certainly haven't laid down. They've had chances in all 4 games. They just haven't been able to make enough plays to win, which makes them dangerous. So it's going to be interesting. Alabama can't take anything for granted because Arkansas is still certainly experienced and talented. And it's been kind of mystifying to me because Coach Pittman is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. That's how he made his bones. And yet that's probably the biggest issue for Arkansas coming into this matchup.
It is. One of the matchups that I'm really going to be looking at is going to be the Arkansas front 7 versus that Alabama offensive line. They gave up 6 sacks yesterday to A&M. One of the things, A&M's defensive front 7 is stout. Arkansas found that out. They gave up 7 sacks and then 15 tackles for loss 2 weeks ago. And that's one of the big matchups that I'm going to be looking at going forward. And that also, like you said, limiting the penalties. Arkansas, again, had double-digit penalties for I do believe it's the fourth week in a row now. They had 10 penalties for 70 yards. Just no matter what the offense does, it seems like the defense is still keeping them in games. You last second touchdown by LSU. Last drive, they had a chance to score against BYU. Still couldn't do it. Again, penalties were the killer. So that's where, like you said, they're kind of up and down right now. And I just don't know exactly what we're going to be seeing from the offensive side of the ball because, yesterday against Ole Miss, they pretty much scrapped the run there for a while because it wasn't working. They don't have the pass blocking skill or scheme right now that works. So they went almost dedicated pass pro for a little bit, and that might set up really well for Alabama to pin their ears back and go after KJ.
Well, KJ is a very experienced guy. I know he's a multi-year captain there. And I think he was a really good fit for Kendall Briles' system. But sometimes when you change offensive coordinators, and Alabama is very familiar with Dan Enos. He was the quarterbacks coach back in 2018. And then he had a really prolific offense with different style personnel under Brett Bielema at Arkansas. Back in 2016. When they upset the Rebels and in that unbelievable finish, they had a very balanced attack. So it's interesting to kind of see how this is played out in a way. With Enos coming back, and certainly Travis Williams taking over. He and Marcus Woodson, the defense. The defense has actually played pretty well, and I think, as you said, competed and kept them in games. So certainly they're going to challenge Alabama's offensive line. Alabama, they were basically down, Jason. And look, we didn't know this going in. Now, I knew TJ Ferguson was injured. He practiced, but I wasn't really anticipating him playing. What we didn't know, Darian Dalcourt, who's, been a guy played a lot in his career. He's been the right guard for the majority of this season, also the backup center. But he had a shoulder issue, and so he didn't play. And so Jaden Roberts, redshirt sophomore from Houston, basically was the right guard the entire game. Nobody knew that was coming. He hadn't played a ton. He played a little bit the week before. But for a first start, he did get a couple of procedure penalties. And Alabama, that's the biggest probably. If you have to ask me, okay, what does Alabama have to clean up the most coming out of the ball game with A&M? I'd say the penalties. They had 9 pre-snap penalties. They've got to clean those up. They can't keep shooting themselves in the foot. Doesn't matter who they're playing, and setting themselves behind the chains. Certainly the running game's got to get better. But A&M, you brought that up. A&M had a lot to do with that in their game plan. So that'll just come with repetition and getting hats on hats. And I think the running game in other avenues and other opponents will be better. But they've got to cut out the penalties. And, but even though he got a couple of penalties, I thought Jaden played well. I thought he, especially in the second half, I thought Alabama, considering A&M came into the game with 20 sacks and got a couple in the first half, I thought most of the sacks were on the quarterbacks. And I'm talking about Milroe. I thought once he didn't read the hot, he got blindsided. Luckily, Alabama recovered it. He gave up a sack in the first series, holding the ball too long. He held the ball too long a few times. And so I think maybe 1 or 2 of those sacks you give it up to the O-line. But a lot of the sacks this year Alabama's given up, I'd say 3/4 of them are, Milroe is his first full year starting. And even when they had to go to the backups, Ty Simpson and Tyler Buckner against USF, they were holding the ball too long sometimes. So it's been a work in progress with this group. But I think the offensive line is starting to show progress. And the next step for Milroe, and he didn't do this in this game, is he has to become a weapon with his legs. He has to understand, look, man, sometimes you're not going to be able to hold on to the ball and hold on to it, and then eventually make a throw at the last second. What you need to do is not take the hits, throw the ball away, live to fight another down. He did that a couple times yesterday, but also take off. Just take off one or two read. If you don't see the guy open, if you see some open grass, take off and use your athletic ability. Because I'll be honest with you, Jason, this group at Alabama, this offense, you've watched a lot of Alabama football under the Saban era. It's been very explosive in the last 6, 7, 8 years. This group has some explosive players to it, and then they made some plays yesterday. but it's not as explosive as, previous editions. And honestly, the way it's evolving under Tommy Rees is their best weapon is Jalen Milroe, whether it be throwing the football deep, making plays, being able to keep a play alive. And he did that a few times yesterday with his feet and making a throw or taking off. Like you saw him against Mississippi State. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He's just getting comfortable as a starting quarterback, but he has to also understand, at least this year especially, look, you're one of Alabama's most dynamic weapons, and it's faster than any of the running backs. So in order for this team to win an SEC title and have a chance to make the playoff, Milroe is going to have to bring more variation to the running game, because I think Alabama has a solid running attack. It's not as good as probably some years past. And so for them to continue to evolve and get better offensively, Milroe has to they have to account for him with his feet too, because eventually, they're going to have to run the football better. You can't throw the ball 3 of every 4 times if Alabama is going to be successful, because I'll be honest, including probably Saturday, they're going to play better secondaries than A&M's. Now, everybody's not going to have A&M's front, but they're going to have some. They're going to face the Tennessees, who has a good pass rush and a secondary is probably a little better than it has been. LSU is not very good defensively, but they ran back a pick 6 yesterday. So, the thing is, down the road, you're going to face Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn. And Auburn defensively has been, much better than anticipated. Yeah. So they're going to have in the future, because everybody's going to have film on you. They're going to start game planning for you. So to change things up and to add more variation to the running game, whether it be zone read, RPO, or whatever, just broken plays, Milroe is going to have to make some plays with his legs and then keep evolving as a passer. And the thing that he's improved on so much since Texas, Jason, is, and this is what we showed yesterday, and he showed it against Mississippi State to a degree, is improved decision-making and short and intermediate passing. And he's done that very, very well the last couple of weeks.
One of the problems that the Razorback offense has been having is capitalizing on touchdowns in the red zone. Mm-hmm. And I was looking the stat up last night because I was writing a piece on Cam Little after the game and how he's been able to capitalize for Arkansas. But the problem is that their offense has been stalling out once they get inside the 20. Is that I think they've settled for at least 5 field goals now inside the 20. And that's been since BYU to now. And with that Alabama front 7, they're going to be licking their chops because they know that Arkansas has not been able to capitalize once they get inside the 20. So, I mean, you really, from an offensive standpoint, you've got to be able to look and say, okay, where are our quick strikes at that we can make longer plays that get us into the end zone where we've been most efficient? Because once we get inside the 20, it's a coin toss at that point.
Well, Alabama has got to continue to do a good job in the red zone. They did a pretty good job against A&M yesterday. They outscored the Aggies 16-3 in the second half, and then they kind of stood on their heads late. Now they got a holding penalty where the Aggies could have scored, but they did a good job of making sure that Aniyah Smith, they knocked him out of bounds before he did score, and then they drew that holding penalty. They forced a field goal. They also recorded a safety earlier that allowed them to extend the lead from a touchdown from just one score. So it kind of put the pressure on the Aggies. Alabama has been pretty good in the red zone. They really only had one bad defensive quarter all season. That was the fourth quarter against Texas. They were winning that game 16-13. Gave up 3 touchdowns, kind of collapsed because they had to play a lot of snaps. I mean, the offense wasn't sustaining drives. They were kind of either boom or bust. They were making big plays or turning it over. And, of course, Texas ran back an interception inside the 5 and then scored in one play. So, Alabama's got to protect the ball against Arkansas. There's no doubt about that. And they have to also take into account, even though Arkansas is 2-4, I mean, 3 of these losses are basically by 1 possession. So they were in all 3 games. They were certainly in the BYU game. They had a double-digit lead, let it get away. That's probably the one game to me that they should have had. And then they played really hard against LSU and scored points and stayed in that game throughout. And then and I'll be the first to say, I thought Ole Miss, the way they had played against LSU, this was being at home. I thought, this would probably be a 2 to 3 touchdown game. I thought potentially Ole Miss might pull away, but to give the Razorbacks credit, they outplayed the Rebels for much of the second half and had a chance into the very late stage of the fourth quarter. So, again, Coach Pittman's got them playing hard. They certainly, I think, still believe in what he's doing. This is not Chad Morris, which I'll be honest, that was Mac Jones' first start in 2019, and that was one of the worst SEC teams I've ever seen in my life. They didn't even compete. Now, that's not what this Arkansas team is doing. For whatever reason this year, Rocket Sanders was injured early. They haven't been able to run it real well, but I think a lot of that has to do with the O-line. I mean, it all starts up front, and, Coach Pittman's group has struggled. I think their roster is still pretty good, though, so Alabama has to be ready to play. I think Alabama is going to play well, though. I like Alabama in the game. I think I saw where they were 19.5-point favorites. If they protect the football and Milroe continues to stay in rhythm and play well, then I think Alabama should win. And I think today I picked something like 37-10, just because I wonder how Arkansas is going to block Alabama. That's my big question, because Alabama has gotten better. I mean, their defensive line's wrecking right now. I mean, coming into the A&M game, the A&M O-line, or D-line, was getting all the pub, but Alabama just knocked their teeth out the second half. They just they played like they got a lot of pressure. The two outside backers, Braswell and Turner, are playing really well. Tim Keenan inside, Jaheim Otis. Justin Aboigbe had the best game of his career. So, it's going to have to be – Arkansas is going to have to play their best game up front to have a shot. But I still like Alabama here, and I think Coach Pittman is going to hopefully get it turned around later this year. I've said this on my show. I don't think he's on the hot seat this season, but if the season keeps trending this way and say they go 5-7 or 4-8 or whatnot, they can't get it turned around, at least get to a bowl. He's probably going to be feeling some heat heading into year 5. But, again, they're still a dangerous team. When you've got a guy like KJ who's played a ton of SEC football, you've got now I know they've had some injuries, especially at the tight end spot, that has taken some guys away, and then they've got a kind of a new wide receiver core, but still they've got Rocket Sanders who's capable. This is going to be a mindset game for Alabama. Arkansas is a wounded animal. They're going to come in trying to save their season. And to be blunt with you, Jason, Alabama can't let Arkansas up off the mat. You've got to put them away, and they're going to fight. I've never seen a Sam Pittman team lay down. So Alabama's going to have to put Arkansas away, no question.
Yeah, it'll be a 4-quarter game, and if that's one of the things that Alabama can't do is let Arkansas hang around until that fourth quarter, because at that point you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Now, one of the things that I have noticed, like during the LSU game, they knew that front seven for LSU was going to be coming, and there was not really much that they could do. So they kept moving the pocket back and forth, left to right. I feel like that's going to be KJ's best, I guess probably would say his best chance of being efficient and getting the ball and moving it up and down the field this Saturday, because, with the speed of KJ, he's able to get outside of the tackles and make some things happen, and that is where he is dangerous. And that, I think that's going to be Arkansas's, probably their recipe for at least some success on Saturday.
Well, I mean, KJ is mobile. I mean, Max Johnson was not, so I felt pretty confident if Alabama could collapse the pocket, they could get home, which they were able to. And South Florida had a mobile quarterback to a degree, and they still got home against him, and played well defensively. But the same way Will Rogers, he's not really a mobile guy. They were able to get home on him. For whatever reason, they seem to have a hex on Will Rogers, and they play really well. They're going to have to get home. And the big thing with KJ, he's a big physical dude. So you got to bring really more than one hat and get him on the ground. I mean, he's a really tough guy. So that the dual threat capability, Alabama's definitely going to have to take into account there. They're going to have to, get KJ Jefferson on the ground. There's no doubt about it. And they're going to have to force some turnovers. This Alabama defense has been much more disruptive than maybe the last 2 or 3. They've already, with the INTs, I think they've already equaled their INT output from all of last year, Jason. Yeah. They've been able to get the ball, on the ground a little bit, get it dislodged. Now, they didn't recover any of them against Texas, but it is what it is. But they've still been much more ball. They have more ball hawks to them. Now, there's a good chance that Alabama's going to be banged up in the secondary. Malachi Moore had an ankle and went out early. He's been playing the star spot. Terrion Arnold finished the game there, so he may start there this coming Saturday. I don't know that there's Earl Little Jr. and then Trey Amos, but I would almost expect to see the lineup we saw for the majority of the rest of the game, which would be Terrion and at the star, the two corners being Trey Amos, the Louisiana Lafayette transfer, and then, of course, Kool-Aid McKinstry on the other side. And then we saw a little bit of Christian Story in at safety, so we'll have to see what happens there because I know also Jalen Key, the transfer from UAB, has been in and out of the lineup too. So there could be some new faces back there. But I think Deontay Lawson was back at the mic. I think he'll still be there, no doubt. And hopefully sans Malachi, they should still be pretty healthy defensively. And then, of course, that James Burnham, the punter, who had a heck of a season, he pulled a muscle. So I don't know that he'll be back fully in the next game, which means Will Reichert may continue to handle the punting. But Will's also maybe the best place kicker in America, even though I will say Cam Little's pretty dang good for Arkansas. I know he made a 56-yarder yesterday. So certainly they have a good kicker at Arkansas. And again, I know I picked Alabama to cover, but it's still a dangerous game. I have a lot of respect for Sam Pittman in Arkansas. I just think right now maybe that Alabama's, ascending and catching Arkansas at a good time because Arkansas is kind of in a funk. It's all about, like, if Alabama were playing Texas now, I think Alabama might even win the game.
Yeah.
If they played them early when they were trying to get their quarterback acclimated and going, and they just didn't. Alabama didn't play as well as they were capable of playing. And right now with Arkansas, they were almost playing better early, even though I know Rocket was out. But it just seems like this season has been really difficult because things are so tough on the offensive line right now. And then, again, they're putting a lot of pressure on their defense. But it's an SEC football game, and it's 11 a.m., so you got to be ready to go. It's going to be, the early morning kick, the brunch kickoff. So Alabama's got to respect their opponent and be ready to go because on any given Saturday, anything can happen. And certainly Sam Pittman and Arkansas could save their season by beating the Tide. But Alabama's had a lot of success against the Hogs. Everybody knows that since Saban came to town. I mean, I think it's 16 straight. And before that, Arkansas had a lot of success against Alabama. So, but there's been some near misses. 07, that game Arkansas led until very, very late. I know I was there covering the game in 2015 when Arkansas led at halftime 7-3, and Alabama was really struggling. Could not move the football very well. I know in 2014, that 1-point game in Fayetteville, 14-13, Alabama was very fortunate to pull that out. So there has been some close games in this series. So you have to understand and be ready that Arkansas is going to try to save their season on Saturday because, again, things aren't trending well right now for this year. But, again, Alabama, it has to understand that now Alabama's kind of been ascending, and they've kind of played the underdog role because a lot of people doubted them against Ole Miss. They doubted them against Texas A&M. Now they're going to be the big favorite. Now it's back to being everybody looking at you as saying you're going to the SEC championship game. You're the best team in the West, but you still have to take care of your business.
Yeah, and, Arkansas looking after that Alabama game, they have Mississippi State coming up, and then they have an off week. And it'll be the first home game that they've had in a month. So, with weary legs on the road, going to Alabama, that's one of those things where you want to think that Sam Pittman is going to try to make this kind of a rock fight. He's going to try to muddy it up a little bit and try anything he can do to, slow Jalen Miller on that offense down, because that's going to be the only way that they are going to have really any chance in this ball game.
Well, yeah, no, they've got to force Milroe into some mistakes, and he has thrown 4 interceptions this year, so he has been prone to the interception. They certainly have to do that and be opportunistic. They're going to have to pick their poison. If I were them, I'd probably still go back to the Texas A&M method. Stop the run, because if you can't stop the run, you're dead against no matter who you play. And then just take your chances on being able to Travis Williams and Marcus Woodson being able to pressure, whether it be through organically or, blitz packages, because Milroe's had trouble reading the blitz. Heat him up, see what happens, and then and see if you can force some turnovers or force Alabama into second and third and long yardage, which is a tough deal. So, I'm sure they're going to attack Alabama. If I'm Alabama, I'm going to try to run and get the run established early against Arkansas, because I think this past week it was not good. I'm going to try to get, some of the run game back a little bit. And then I'm still going to build on the confidence of Milroe, though, and I'm going to try to be balanced. I'm going to try to, I thought Alabama did a good job and pass more on first down than they have been, and weren't as predictable. So if you can dictate the down and distance, if you can get into second in third and short, then I think you can make some plays against Arkansas. And that's what Alabama's got to do. They've got to try to dominate the line of scrimmage. They've got to try to pressure KJ, maybe turn them over. And then again, for Alabama offensively, I still think that you got to run the football with Milroe and the backs, and then set yourself up. And then, and with his newfound confidence, hopefully, continue to spread the ball out to these wide receivers and tight ends, and just make some big plays. And hopefully, I would say that what Alabama needs to do is start quick. And they started decently fast against A&M. But they need to start quickly against Arkansas and still put doubt in the Hogs' minds, because they've been struggling for a month. Coming into Tuscaloosa is very difficult. Arkansas, I don't think they've won in Tuscaloosa, I want to say since 03. So
03, yeah, that's the first number that came to my mind too. I think it was 03.
Yeah, because I think Alabama won in 05 and certainly won in 07 when Coach Saban came to town. So you've just got to dictate things, and what it is for Alabama, it's about you. You got to take care of what you can control. You've got to have your mind right and be ready to play, and understand you're still playing an SEC Western Division foe who has been good under Coach Pittman and has absolutely improved as a program by their roster's in much better shape than it was 4 years ago. And so this is still a program that's played a very difficult schedule. Certainly played the LSUs, who has a great offensive football team, played them near the end. They played Ole Miss, who's got a great offensive team. And so when you think about that, and BYU's an underrated opponent, I mean, they're very, very capable, no question about that. So when you look at what they've done, and then A&M, they for whatever reason in that series, A&M has just had their number. So, but you just have to, and Alabama's had Arkansas's number, but there's no guarantees each year. So the key to me for Alabama is to play clean and to get off to a good start.
One of the things that going into this game with Sam Pittman, in close game, within one score games, in the last 8 games, he's 1-7. And that's one of the alarming trends. Now, I was talking with Otis Kirk. By the way, Otis told me to tell you hi. He said, yeah, since I told him that you and I were going to be talking tonight, he said to let you know, he said, hey.
Oh, yeah. Love Otis, man. Going to try to get him on this week. Love my man.
He's great. Yeah, him and I were talking a little bit about when you had mentioned earlier about Sam being on the hot seat. If you get rid of Sam, you also get rid of this defensive staff, because, that's one of the things that I think, honestly, will save his job right now, just because of the way the defense has improved from last year to this year. You might get to see some wholesale changes on the offensive side if things don't get, back on track and they start to pick it back up. But I agree with you that Sam he's not going to be on the hot seat this year. It's going to be warm going into next year. And whenever I thought about this for quite a long time, and I sitting there and I noticed some similarities between Ed Orgeron before he was let go at LSU, and some of the changes that had to happen, and then he didn't make the best changes after that. I see that with Sam. Now, Sam, he made some great changes on the defensive side, not so much on the offensive side. I kind of thought that Sam might be in the same trajectory as Ed Orgeron, not so much on the defensive side, but that offensive side, something's got to happen.
Well, I mean, and the thing that's the black mark against Coach right now is O-line. I mean, because that's his baby. Now, certainly, I know he's had Brad Davis left, and that wasn't the greatest situation. When he left and went to LSU and whatnot, that wasn't great. I know he wasn't happy with it, but it's still the bottom line is he's an offensive line guru, and of course he certainly brought in a good young offensive line coach considered at the time. And the surprising thing is a lot of talent returned on this offensive line, and now it's struggling. With Alabama, there's kind of been some of the same stuff because Alabama improved under Eric Wolford last year, but they did lose. The left tackle Tyler Steen to the NFL to transfer from Vandy. But they brought in Caden Proctor. But I think some of Alabama's problems has been a couple things: injuries at right guard and center, not being completely healthy, and then you have two inexperienced left tackles. And Coach Pittman will attest to this: the transfer portal, all your depth is gone. See, I get asked this all the time. Okay, why don't you try somebody else at center or left tackle? They ain't a whole lot because a lot of those guys all transferred, at the end of last year in the transfer portal. So most of your depth is freshmen. But I think with Coach Pittman, they had a lot of guys coming back. I think maybe schematically some of the changes have hurt. They haven't been able to gel a little bit with this new system. So it is going to be interesting to see how Arkansas, if they get better the rest of this season. And then, how do you tweak it? How do you change? Are you portal heavy? Do you bring in some guys on the O-line that are maybe more experienced? And then what do you do? Is it one of those things where you need to tailor the system to Dan Enos and what he wants because he's been successful there before? Or is it one of these things where maybe Enos and Pittman don't mesh? I don't know. But it's going to be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how Arkansas finishes this season. I don't think they're that far away from being a good football team, though. So I think if he makes a couple of tweaks, he can start getting them back to postseason. And the one thing I do know about the Razorback fan base, they certainly want to compete for championships, and Texas and Oklahoma are coming, but they also are realistic too. This was just awful situation that Coach Pittman took over, maybe as tough as any, and he's gotten them consistently to postseason, won postseason games. And so I think, they need to – patience is hard in this portal era, but let's just see how he handles the rest of this season starting Saturday and then into year 5 if he can get this team back on track, because I think the recruiting's good. It comes down to if the coaching changes are going to work. And I did think it was very interesting that he changed his strength staff completely. Sometimes that takes a full year to take effect as well. So I just think – if I'm Hunter Yurachek and I'm the administration, just relax. Let's see what happens the rest of the year, how hard the team plays, then maybe make some changes, some subtle ones in the offseason, and see what happens in year 5. But I think Coach Pittman's done a really solid job and for the most part, and I'm going to be very interested to see how hard they play on Saturday.
One of the things that I've kind of talked about with some folks behind the scenes a little bit, not at the university level, but in friend groups and stuff like that, bounce this off, is that KJ has one more year left. He has that COVID year,
right?
And there is a possibility that he might transfer because and try to see if he can improve some of his draft stock. Because let's face it, this year he hasn't helped himself by returning.
Well, he's gotten beat up, and it's tough. I mean, look, before Milroe started asserting himself, I even said before this last game, this was a fork in the road game for Milroe. I said if he plays really well and Alabama gets a win, he's going to be the quarterback, no question, the rest of this season and maybe even into next year. But if things had run off the tracks on Saturday, he wouldn't even be guaranteed he'd hold on to the job the rest of the year, and he graduates in December, might end up in the portal. So things can change quickly. No doubt about it. A lot of it may stem with KJ about how comfortable he feels in the system as the year goes on. How much better can the O-line be? I mean, and then of course where he could go. I mean, and continue his career. You have to have those options as well. With Alabama, I think Jalen Milroe is improving. He's a dynamic athlete. He's still raw. But the thing that I do like about this Alabama team right now, Jason, is they had 14 penalties for 99 yards yesterday, 9 preset snap penalties. They threw an interception. They mismanaged the clock at the end and still were able to, by about 1 second, run the clock out. I think they can still get better. I think they're just starting to ascend. I don't think they're near their ceiling yet with the improvement I've seen from Milroe, because I had questions about it. Now, it's got to continue. There's no guarantees, but if he continues to mature as a passer, decision maker, cuts down on the turnovers, becomes a dynamic weapon, with this defense, this Alabama defense being the best I've seen since 2017, which was a national championship year. And yes, I already think they're better than the 20 national championship defense. I think this defense and this kicking game, which I think is the best they've had in a while, because Will Reichert is a pro, I think, and then Burnap hopefully coming back healthy, Alabama's got a chance to, make a run now if the maturation and development continues with Jalen Milroe. But this has been an interesting last few weeks because Milroe was fighting for his job, and Tommy Rees was already on the hot seat as well because he's coming over from Notre Dame, and he's taking some steps forward. So Milroe and Rees are starting to, I think, get acclimated and comfortable with each other and starting to, get this offense rolling. But now they got to continue it on Saturday against Arkansas.
They do, because I feel like also for Alabama, this is the first stepping stone towards the Iron Bowl in a positive way for them, because like you said earlier with Hugh Freeze and the defense at Auburn, it's kind of surprised a lot of folks.
Right.
You want to make sure that, Jalen Milroe is taking those positive steps each week, because whenever it comes down to it, you as well as I know that whenever both of those two teams, Alabama and Auburn, step on the field, everything's out the window of what you know. It's about how you react.
Well, and Jordan-Hare is a very tough environment. They almost beat Georgia, and they have some quarterback issues at Auburn with Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford, but yet they still put together a good enough plan and play good enough defense to play Georgia for 4 quarters and have a 10-0 lead in the first quarter. So they're certainly very capable. So Alabama's got some big tests coming up. They got to play Arkansas this week. They got a revenge game against Tennessee the next week at home after what happened a year ago to snap that 16-game winning streak by Alabama, 15, because because of course Coach Saban, this is year 17 for him, so Alabama, they would have won their 16th in a row last year, but they snapped the 15-game winning streak. So again, they've got that game. You've got LSU, which LSU still may have the best offense in the league. Especially with
what they did to Missouri in the fourth quarter. Holy cow.
Yeah, and Logan Diggs has given them a running game as well. He did not play against Florida State. Now, their defense right now is not good. We'll see if it can get any better. But right now, my player of the year in the SEC would be Jaden Daniels. He's been amazing. I know they already lost 2 games, but he's been outstanding. And so that's a very, stern test in Bryant Denny, another revenge game with LSU coming. And then, of course, you got Auburn at the end of the year in Jordan-Hare. And as you said, last time it was there in Jordan-Hare, it took magic from Bryce Young in overtime to, pull it out. So Alabama still got some tests, awaiting them, no doubt. And, of course, they've got Arkansas at 11 a.m. And that's the first step in this process, to try to move on and go to 6-1.
Well, Drew, man, I really appreciate you jumping on with me tonight. I know that we were trying to get everything worked out and stuff, and I know it's Sunday, but I really do appreciate you jumping on and previewing the Arkansas-Alabama matchup next Saturday.
Appreciate it. Like I say, I think Alabama's keys to it, they're going to have to be balanced, get back to running the football, fix the running game, cut the penalties down, and then I think, Milroe has to protect the ball, which he did in the last game, and continue to evolve. And if they do that, and then defensively they continue to play assignment football and, play as a unit and continue to grow, I think they got a good chance in Saturday.
Yep, definitely. Well, for Drew DeArmond, I'm your host, Jason Pattyson. I want to thank everybody for jumping on with us for a Hogsville.net special. And y'all take care, and we will see you all next week. Take care, Drew.
Thank you.